Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's dealtohealteas.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.com. Again, that's dealtohealteas.com. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. All right. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. To deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast on all of your podcast listening platforms, as well as our new YouTube channel. Make sure you guys go and check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Again, that's the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Well, you will find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we talk to other girl dads and daughters sometimes in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. We amplify the voices of girl dads to the world. And also you'll find, of course, the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, which we're listening to now, as well as two other podcasts that we have, which is a podcast called Earn and Irv, which is a podcast that I do with my brother, as well as the Faith Walk Love Talk podcast, which is a Bible study podcast that my sister has been doing for over 3 years now. You guys get to log in and check that out. Again, make sure you go check that out at the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube. All right. So again, we thank you guys for tuning in once again to the podcast. Also, our product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase for us to handle our business. So our product of the week is our Purpose Journal, as well as our Purpose Planner, because I believe we are to journal to keep track of where we've been and where we are, as well as plan for the future. Both of them are available on Amazon. So please check out the descriptions. The links are there that you can get your Purpose Journal as well as your Purpose Planner to help us stay on the air and do the things that we do. Now, today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Mr. Joevan Palmer. How you doing, sir?
Good, man. How you doing?
I am good, man. It's been a while. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for being here, because you could have been anywhere doing anything, but you took out time to be here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. And then what I was finna say is it's been a while, but you've been in the lab, putting in some work, and I was sharing with you off camera that I came across you some years ago, maybe about 2 years ago, it probably was. And then it's like you disappeared off the scene, and I was like, okay, I don't know what happened to Joevan. And then you came back now, and now you're back at it doing some big things. So I'm glad to have you here, man. Thank you for taking out the time to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
No problem, no problem. So we're gonna jump right in it. Joevan, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So, like you said, my name is Joevan Palmer. Born and raised, originally from Syracuse, New York, now by way of Charlotte, North Carolina, by way of Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm definitely a transplant along the East Coast. Let's see, I'm a therapist, provisional therapist right now, working here in Atlanta, Georgia. A coach as well. I deem myself as the healing coach. So I help individuals who have gone through traumatic situations pretty much get on that path to healing and wholeness. Like I tell people all the time, you're never healed, but you're always healing because
Mhm.
life happens, situations happens, and coping always is a skill that will get you through that moment. Also, I am a tech founder as well as of a mental health company called Sayola Health, where we are building a mental health app to help individuals go through their healing journey in community, because I believe that you don't heal alone, you heal best in community. The African proverb says that it takes a village to raise a child, but also takes a village to help individuals get along the healing journey as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that, and I agree with you 100%. I actually started a community Facebook group community a while back, and it was kind of dormant, and I wasn't doing much with it. But I really recently started really being active in it and growing it, and we've grown a couple hundred members in the last couple weeks. And so I definitely, again, being in the healing space myself, and I definitely understand and know the power of community when it comes to building that. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later because I do want to know more about it, with the app and everything. But let's go back. Excuse me. Let's go back a little bit, right? And so to really get into who Joevan is, right, and what prompted you to even start this journey. Because one thing that I believe with most of us that are in this space of being coaches or even therapists, sometimes a lot of time there are some situations that we had to heal from, to get to the other side of, in order for us to be able to then, reach out to others and say, hey, I made it through this, you can make it through as well. And, like I said, I often talk about the things that I've been through: depression, divorce, suicidal ideations, and all of those things. So tell us a little bit about your backstory, Joevan. What was that catalyst that happened in your life that made you, could have been a experience that you made it through, and then what prompted you once you got on the other side of it to be like, you know what, I'm gonna reach back and help others that's been going through the same thing.
Yeah, so I was a victim of sexual assault at the age of 12 years old. And it was a burden I carried by myself for probably 10 to 15 years. Didn't tell anybody about what happened, how it happened, when it happened. So it's pretty much like, you go through your life's journey as a kid by yourself, and people understand your anger, they understand your frustrations, they understand like the pain that you're dealing with, because you're masking it the best that you can. To, you don't know how to, one, release that pain and information that you actually have dealt with. So I went through that, started told my parents about what happened to me maybe at the age of 19. My ex-girlfriend at that time in college, she had, encouraged me to share with my parents, because she said, they did something they needed to know. So I shared with my parents over Christmas break one year. And during that time, it was a weight off my shoulders, but I was still dealing with the aftermath of, like I said, all the things that I have been dealing with, as a child up until the age of 19. And then, still carried the burden because, like I said, after that, like, it still wasn't nothing. Therapy wasn't a thing in my family. It's not something that,
Mhm.
I've known my parents to go to when I was a child. Nothing I've known any of my actually family members or friends to actually go to at that time. So it just wasn't something that was really introduced to me. So went along that time through college, just being very promiscuous, had a lot of a lot of sex, and just trying to feel like I needed to prove my manhood for somehow way. And throughout that journey, after graduating college, I moved here to Atlanta, Georgia, and then just kind of like some things that I kind of been dealing with on the inside started to actually show itself on the outside, where I began to live like a life of homosexuality for a moment in my life, just experimenting to see if this is part of me, and not realizing that, excuse me, it was a part of my trauma that I have gone through as a child that was pretty much kind of rare in itself. And at the age of 29 is when I actually had my first therapy session, when I got a job at a boys group home. And part of our job was to take them to therapy. It was like mandatory that they went to therapy every Tuesday, I think it was. And I sat in on one of their sessions, and just seeing them be able to just talk about the things that they went through as foster children, and being in the system and losing family, and to one, just being in the system, or two, just like for death or the streets. And it was just kind of like liberating, just hearing them and watching them express, and as children be vulnerable, and cry in front of another human being. So I talked to their therapist, wanted to know if I can actually become a client of hers, and she allowed me to become a client. And I shared my story with her, just kind of got everything off my chest, everything I've been feeling, and started learning more about myself and understanding more of who I am and why I was the way I was, and why I did certain things and why I reacted to certain things in the way I did. And so that was like my pivotal moment to really was like, what, this is what I want to do. Between working in a group home and actually being in therapy, it was like, okay, this is the thing I want to do, because I was always the guy that people always came to talk about life situations. So I've been a therapist all my life, honestly. But it was just, there are certain tools and modalities that you have to learn, of course, to become like a licensed therapist, in today's world. So I went the social work route, and just because it's more versatile and allows me to kind of really be able to understand people on a clinical level. So that's why I wanted like the most in-depth version of it. So I went to school, got my master's in social work, studying right now for my licensure exam right now to actually finish the process of becoming a licensed therapist and everything right now. But the good thing is that I do get to still become a therapist, being a therapist during time being I'm studying in my studies and everything. So I do therapy part-time at a local nonprofit here in Atlanta, working with children and adults. And then also have, like I said, I do coaching as well. Like I said, I deem myself as the healing coach, and also now working on a tech app as well.
I love it. I love it. I want to touch back on several things that you mentioned. One of them being, how um, how therapy wasn't something that was necessarily experienced or talked about in your family. And I wanted to point that out because that is so common in our communities, especially as African Americans, and we don't necessarily believe we're getting to a space now where it's more commonly talked about and commonly accepted. But when we were younger, right? I'm going to be 49 this year, right?
Yeah,
So when we were younger, it was like don't talk, don't tell, almost. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
also with me growing up in a church family,
Mhm.
it was almost like either or, like you had to pick a side. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like either you was gonna believe in God and prayer, and that prayer is gonna fix everything, or you're gonna believe in therapy.
Hmm.
When the reality of it is both together, because our being as humans, we have a spiritual side and we have a natural side, and so
Hmm.
some things have to be addressed on both ends, because some things could be just spiritual, some things could be just natural, but then there are some things that cross over, and so we have to address it from both sides. And so I'm glad that you were able to step out of that and experience yourself the power of therapy. you know um that's one. And then I also want to talk about, you mentioned about being abused at a young age, and I want to congratulate you on one part for being able to stand up and share that testimony, right? As men, we know, especially in this space, that there are so many things that we hold in and that we keep to ourselves. And you mentioned about, going through different phases trying to prove your manhood, and that, although it's a part of us as men, it's also one of our biggest weaknesses, because it holds us back from so much healing, because of we're always thinking, well, what if someone else perception of me going to be? You know what I mean? What are they going to think about me if I say this, if I acknowledge that I'm feeling this way or that I'm dealing with this? And that's why I'm even myself really vocal about the things that I've been through, you know, especially when it comes to the suicidal ideations and, you know, feeling like I wanted to take my own life, because I'm not only as a man, but then also I'm a bricklayer by trade. So in the construction industry, we have one of the highest numbers of suicide, and we're also a male dominated industry. And so you got all these men that's dealing with all this stuff, but yet have to go to work and put on the face of being, you know, bravado and manly. And then you come home and you can't relax, and you still got to do that amongst your family and amongst your peers. You can't never let your hair down, you know, for a lack of a better term. And so we're not having these conversations. We're not talking about the things that we're dealing with, and we're dying inside, and sometimes to the extent that we end up dying on the outside because we end up taking our own lives. So
Mhm.
that's why I am so vocal about, you know, my bout with suicidal ideations and depression and all of those things, dealing with the death of my mom and that whole thing. I'm very open about it because I want us to be okay to talk about it. You know what I mean? I want us to feel that it's a safe space. So if
Right.
I'm able to tell you everything that I'm dealing with, then you feel okay, he's being vulnerable with me. Now I can let down my, you know, let down my shield and be vulnerable as well. And so when it comes to just being as men, being vulnerable, and then, you know, especially in your space of dealing with people, you know, when they're coming into your office as a therapy or coming to you as a coach, how big and how much of a part does vulnerability play in that healing?
It plays a big part, because if you're not vulnerable, we really can't get anywhere. Honestly, you know, it's just you're one telling the same lie to yourself that you've probably been telling yourself all your life, and then
Mhm.
two, it's just vulnerability opens you up to another side of you that you've never experienced. You know, for me, when I've started opening up myself, to share my story and to kind of share what I've been through, it opened me up to just kind of just seeing that one, I'm not alone, because for a long time I thought I was alone in what I've experienced and what I went through. And then two, it also helped me to understand that, you know, it's okay to speak about what you've been through. You know, not like I said, not everyone is privy to have these opportunities to speak about what they've been through. And also everyone's not privy to, really hear what you have to say about yourself. You know, it's like, you have to be very selective in who you start sharing these things with early on in the early on part of your life, because like I said, you're going through another self-discovery where you're being vulnerable with people and you don't know if people will utilize that as a weapon against you. And that was my my biggest fear was that if I share this with anyone, will this be used as a weapon against me? And the beauty in my story and my situation was that it wasn't. My homeboys, like my closest guy friends, I always thought they would judge me for my life experiences and everything like that. And they were like, man, I just wish you would have told us, man. So we know how to, like, one, help you and help, to handle you as well. My
Mhm.
girlfriends were like, like, hey, like, we still love you. We still care, for you. Nothing's going to change. Like, the relationship is still the same. Nothing's different. So when you have one, great people in your corner, two, you're a great person yourself, and three, you just give vulnerability a shot, that's
Yeah.
when the true healing begins. And that's when you find your people. That's when you find your tribe. And that's when you find yourself. Every season of my life, I've been discovering more and more of me due to vulnerability. Like, I'm in this new season of my life of love right now, where I'm dating, my girlfriend, she, like, really prides and digs into some areas that I've never experienced in my life before. When it comes to just one, loving self and allowing yourself to be loved, because when you go through traumatic experiences, one of the hardest things to do is to allow yourself to be loved and
Mhm.
or to either love another individual. So now I'm in this new love season of my life, and it's like, it's new to me. Like, I've dated before, but I've never really, like, told somebody, oh, I love you. Like, it's, oh yeah,
Yeah.
like, cool. Like, I just kind of kept things at bay and kept people at a distance, just because, one, the fear of rejection, the fear of hurt, the fear of disappointment, just so many fears that you talk that just pop up in your mind or pop up in your subconscious mind that we don't understand, that are there and why they're there, and all these voices that these made up voices and these made up situations that we create. It's like, if you don't choose to be vulnerable, you will never know how far you can get or how far you can get beyond that one season of your life. There's so many seasons ahead of you, so many seasons ahead of us that, we just choosing not to experience. I want to experience every season of my life. And the only way I can do that is through vulnerability. Like I said, I'm not the vulnerability, expert. I want to say, but I teach people how to become vulnerable because like you got to learn how to be vulnerable in your own space and in your own way. Like I can teach you I can tell you how I've done it, but the experience is yours and how you go about doing it. So it's like vulnerability is very challenging, especially for Black men, because one, we've been so, dehumanized over the years. We go back to slavery and the buck breaking and the dehumanization in crowds of, people. That's where that humiliation, we don't realize that generational trauma that just carries on from generation to generation. Like, post-traumatic slave syndrome exists and we don't recognize it. So we wonder why our Black men are the way they are. We are the way we are because we haven't dealt with trauma that, one, doesn't even belong to us. Two, that's just kind of been embedded through our DNA or been embedded through society or been embedded through our own personal life experiences that we are just harboring inside. And it's like, eventually that's why Black men, we find ourselves exploding, find ourselves with hypertension, find ourselves with gout, because we choose to go to drugs, alcohol, sex, instead of going to, one, either God, two, going to therapy, three, going to a community of brothers who you can trust and have that small circle. Like, people say that these things aren't out here for men, and I would agree to an extent. Like, yes, we don't have much out here for Black men specifically. But my thing is this, like, if you want it, you create it.
Yeah.
Everything I want in life that I say I don't have, I just go and create it. I'm a very creative individual. I love to just explore more of who I am, my creative side. So I said, hey, I want to become a therapist. So I went to school, created myself to be a therapist, of course. I want to be a coach. So I went to got my actual certification as a coach, from a, actual psychiatrist. I wanted to say, what, I got this idea for this app. So anything I want, I create. So it's like, you have the opportunity to create healing in your life. You have the opportunity to create vulnerability. You have the opportunity to create wholeness. Like I tell people all the time, we all have a choice. You can either choose to remain the same, or you can choose to say, what, I want to experience a new part of a new person, a new side of me, a new, healing journey. I want to experience a new spirit. I want a new experience, maybe know love. I want to experience like true love and, true vulnerability, and true, like, openness and true transparency.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I want to go back to one of the things that you mentioned earlier, and that was, when it comes to being vulnerable, being selective about who you're vulnerable with, right? And not only being selective, but there comes a time when you just have to kind of step out of it. And when you do step out, on that faith to be vulnerable, you find out who's actually in your corner,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you mentioned about your support of your friends and your family when you were vulnerable enough to be like, look, this is what it is. And they was like, all right, you could have told us earlier because we would have then knew how to, support you in that way had we known. And I remember I talk about this all the time about, when I started talking about my suicidal ideation was when I started the podcast, right? And by the time I started the podcast, it probably had been like a year or so into it before I was able, before I started openly talking about it. And I remember one of my sisters called me and be like, how did we not know? You know what I mean? How did you go through all that and we not know? And I was like, because we weren't having the conversations, and then I just wasn't saying it. And which goes into another part that I want to bring up, that oftentimes we do feel alone, but sometimes we feel alone because we make ourselves alone. You know what I mean? Because we think about nobody's going to understand us, nobody's going through this but me. And so we withdraw ourselves from those very people that could be supporting us, and but when we are vulnerable enough to let down our guard and be vulnerable with, of course, being selective who those people are. But when you find those true people in your corner and you're able to say, look, this is who I am, this is what I'm dealing with, these are some of the things that I carry, then we realize how much support that we do have. And then you talked about the spaces for Black men. you know uh, I would say in the past, I would say that there wasn't a lot of spaces, but in this era that we are now, there are a lot of resources and a lot of ways for us to connect now, especially with the internet, and Facebook and things like that. There are so many groups and so many spaces. Number one, If you can't find it, like you said, create it. And then if you can't find it, then you probably just not looking hard enough, because
Mhm.
there's so many people that's out here. There's so many different platforms, and even just me, since I've been in the podcasting space, and it's only been like, a year or 2 years or something like that. But I've met so many men, who have podcasts, who are coming together, who do things together, to support one another, who are creating safe spaces for us to be able to just have conversations like this.
Yeah,
So now the resources now is much more vast, excuse me, than it was in the past. You know what I mean? And so, although, we have to look for it, we have to be vulnerable enough to say, okay, I need it and look for it. But I think the resources are there, a lot more now than they were in the past. I want to ask you something else though, on the journey of being vulnerable, and opening up yourself, there comes a level of when you, excuse me, when you cross over into from the victim to being the victor, right? And then now becoming the victor, so much so to the point that now you're able to reach out and grab the other victims and help to pull them through. There comes a level, excuse me, there comes a level of transparency in that space, because it's one thing to be vulnerable with those who support you, but then when it comes to those who you're trying to support, there comes a level of transparency that you have to be to really connect with them so they understand, like, no, I am you. You know what I mean? I'm maybe a little further down the road, but I am you. I was in the space that you're in now, and I'm just working, to kind of help you get through what you're going through. So when it comes to your own testimony and your own vulnerability, not vulnerability, but your own transparency with those that you support, how much of an effect does that have on the person that you are trying to help, when they really can see your heart and see that you are and you understand what they're going through?
yeah. I think it all starts with, like you said, your heart. Seeing a lot of people see your heart and kind of see more so who you are. So, you know, people who know me know that I just have one of the biggest hearts here on this earth. I believe, um, and people can see that. And as men, we know BS when we see BS, we call it and we see it. And I know for me, for I can only speak for myself, that it's my heart, it's my heart of love, my heart of servitude, my heart, just to kind of see transformation not only in myself but in other people, that draws people to me. And with that, it just allows for people to say, okay, if I change my ways, or if I, shift some things about me, or if I, take this thing that I do like about myself and remove this thing that I don't like about myself, and really like put forth the effort to just make, take the first step. Like I tell people all the time, it's all about taking the first step into becoming that person that you want to be. So it's like, okay, sit down with yourself, journal. Who do I want to become? Why do I even want to become this person? Why don't I want to be the person that I am today, or the person I was as a child? Like we see so many things and so many outbursts that happen, and we wonder why. And it's like, because people are still reenacting their childhood times, and they don't even
Mm-hmm.
notice it. They think, oh, this is just me. This is just who I am and how I am. And that's not true. That's maybe a part of you, but let's go deeper and ask the question of, well, why? When did this start? Oh, it started when, as a child, my mom, she's always yelled at me and this and the third, or my dad used to always hit me, or, people used to always touch me. So, I developed that habit. What people don't understand is that what happens to you, or what you experience, what you see, what happens in your environment, you tend to become that.
Mm-hmm.
You have a choice to say, you know what, I see my environment, I don't like it, I have to change some things about it, because if I don't change things about it, I want to becoming that, and I want to become that. I tend to absorb that in a sense. So it's just like, helping people understand, like, yes, environment plays a huge part in, your upbringing and who you become. And also help people, hey, like, if you want to seek change, if you want to be the change, you have to make the choice. And that choice is saying, okay, I want to heal, or I don't want to heal, and I want to remain the same.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I always say to anybody that uses the phrase "this is just who I am," that means you got some work to do. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? And I tell anybody that, because just being in this space of helping people, and
Mhm.
again being that person like you, the person that everybody comes to, with their issues, to kind of talk it through.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people, and when you get to that place when you're like, well, this is just who I am, I always say you got to address that because it's saying two things. It's saying, number one, you've accepted the person that you are or this version of yourself. And then a lot of times you also accepted that you're not expecting to grow anymore. Because
Mm.
if you're saying this is who I am, that's a final product. You don't never want to be a final product. You want to always be developing and growing. And so when you get to saying, well, this is just who I am, that means that's where you decided to stop doing the work. You know what I
Mm.
mean? That's the era that you just like, yeah, I'm just gonna stay right here, for whatever reason. And so I just know that's like a trigger comment to me. Like
Mm.
once I hear that, I'm like, no, you got some work to do.
For
Because
sure.
anytime you be like, no, this is just me, and it's usually and maybe it's just my experience. I haven't never heard anybody say that in a good way. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? When you hear somebody say this is just who I am, it's never in a good way. It's always some kind of negative trait or some trauma or something that they've just rested in and decided to stay in that space. And so whenever I hear somebody say that, I'm always like, nah, you got to work on that
Right.
because that's is something behind that, even just that statement itself. But I did want to comment on this. One of the things you said about yourself being genuine and being a person that people are drawn to just from your personality, and we've never met in person,
Mhm.
but a couple years ago when I came across you, you weren't even at the forefront. You were like the assistant to someone else at that time, but just in conversation and just watching how you guys interacted with each other on online and things of that nature, I was drawn to you, to your personality. So now even more so when I came across you again and this version of yourself, I'm like, oh, okay, let me reach back out so we can connect, and so that's just a testament to your genuineness and the heart that you have. That I'm in Chicago, you're in Atlanta, that's a long ways apart from each other, but to even virtually be able to make that connection, like, all right, I think this is okay guy I want to connect with, again, just a testament to who you are as an individual. And so, lastly, I want to know more about your company and the app that you're building. And first of all, how did you even come up with the concept that what I want to do an app? Because especially in this space that we're in, you could have easily went into podcasting. You know what I mean? You was already in that area anyway, so you could have easily went that way. You did do coaching, and you are doing coaching. But what was the thing that made you say, what, I'm gonna take it a little farther and change it up a little bit and go the app route? And then tell me a little bit more about the app and what you're trying to achieve for your clients through that.
Yeah, so it was the idea birthed itself in my homeboy's living room. We were all just sitting around having like a little entrepreneur meetup, and we were all just trying to think of like what's our next big thing. And my homegirl had mentioned like doing an app, and I said that'd be a cool idea. I see all these other companies out here. I think I can do that. I can take a stab at it. So the idea birthed itself. I don't have access to it, but pretty much a piece of paper. I just wrote it out, designed it on a piece of paper, and said this is what I want to be. Boom. And then from there, I had got into an actual tech program called Square One Startup School that pretty much was like an incubator that kind of helped me really birth the idea, get the MVP together, and really like piece it together to make more sense. And now we're in the actual fundraising phase where we're like looking for investors to actually fund it so we can build out the prototype. And I actually built the prototype myself using AI, but kind of like get it out there to where we can actually have it to where users can use the app and experience what we are experiencing and everything. So the app is pretty much a space where individuals who are going through any type of mental health situation, they can come and find a therapist on the app. They can come and find a tribe on the app. They can come listen to therapists give 30-minute to an hour speeches on depression, anxiety, PTSD, CPTSD, you name whatever that therapist specializes in, trauma, whatever it may be, anxiety, ADHD, you know autism. We'll have people in there who are speaking on those things, and you go into like various rooms. There'll be a space where you can just get mental health resources. I want to learn more about autism. I want to learn more about ADHD. I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, so I need to share these resources. So you can go in there get the resource. You can share it with your family members and everything like that. We have a portion inside the app where if you are going through a situation, you don't know how to reach out. You just tap a button and it sends a text message to 5 of your top friends that say, hey, you're on my top 5 list in my app. I am going through something. I don't know how to say I'm going through something, but I need some people to kind of surround me right now. So those are some of the features that we have in the app, and we're looking to probably launch probably in this year, top of next year, like really launch into the actual marketplace. But right now we have to build up our email list and build that community around it to get the investors to say, okay, cool. We see that you have this community of individuals, of thousands of people who are interested in your app. You built this community. You meet with them on a weekly basis. They've voiced what they like about the app, what they don't like about the app. We've refined it and all types of stuff. And then now what we're doing next is launching it and raising the funds.
I love it. I love it. I want to say two things. First of all, the first thing I want to say is those little entrepreneurship circles, they're life changing, right?
Sure.
When
Yeah,
you
yeah.
meet those like minded people, and I was sharing this recently with some people that I was talking to, and actually so David Shands came to Chicago
Mm-hmm.
a couple years ago, right? He was doing a podcast tour type deal, and I was like, all right, I'm going to that. I'm going to be at the event. So I was front row at the event. Him and Donnie was on stage. I was front row. To my right was a young man named Marcellus. To my left was a young lady named Veronica. Didn't
Okay.
know either of them, right? But we met at that. We met at that event, and over the last couple of years we've been working together on different things, and just really building together.
Yeah.
And so even now, like last year, we started a entrepreneurship circle,
Mm-hmm.
and last year we did our first event, which is a single parents conference last year. And so this year we're doing it again, and we also have like 3 or 4 other events that we're planning to do this year together, just by coming together, and again having those moments where we just like, all right, let's just throw all our ideas in a hat and then support each other to bring it to pass. So I definitely want to hit on that, because I think that's a hidden gem that a lot of people don't recognize. Just
Right.
like getting in that circle of like-minded people,
Mm-hmm.
with a like-minded goal, and that's past the point of talking about it, because that was one of the things when we first met in our group. We did a lot of talking and eating. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Every
Yep.
time we eat, we just chopping it up and eating it. And it was like, you know what? We're not doing this no more. From now on, we meeting with a purpose. We're gonna start doing some events. And so last year was our first events that we started and was successful with those events. And now this year we already have like 4 or 5 events already, planned throughout the year. So I just want to mention that. And then also, kind of in that same vein, when you mentioned about the app and having those spaces where they can find community on the app,
Yeah.
I really liked that. And then that last part that you said I really like, which is the reaching out part, the part that they just send that text message to your top 5 friends and be like, yo, this is what I'm dealing with. Because a lot of times we can't find the words, and then especially as men, we're not always used to expressing ourselves verbally. So to be able to tell somebody, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, it may be hard for a lot of us, but I think that's a great resource to be able to use, to be like, you know what, this is what this, I don't know if they have to type that or if it's like a prompt that's already set. This is like, just send it, you know
Yep.
what I mean? But I think either way, I think that's a great thing to have. And I applaud you on that, man. And I definitely want you to give us whatever information that we have so that we can support you in whatever way that we can as a community with that. I definitely want to know more about it. And before we get out of here, I would like for you to have the last word, right? I'd like you to leave us with a word of advice, motivation, however you feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely leave us with your social media handles and things of that nature, where we can find you, and also where we can find you to support you with the app with the app. So I give you a couple seconds to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure you guys are checking me out at our main website, which is dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org, because our mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Make sure you guys go there and check out more information about everything that I have going on with the podcast, with the workshops and things of that nature. And you can also book me to come out to be a speaker at your school or organization. All of that information is there. So again, go to dealhealfulfill.org in order to check that out. Also, make sure you guys go to our ebooks by ejames.com, which is our website where I have the ebooks, some ebooks that I've written. Right now, I'm giving away for free my ebook, Forgiving Me, the 4-Step Guide to Self Forgiveness. I'm giving that ebook away absolutely free. Again, that's at ebooksbyejames.com. In that ebook, I help us to walk through forgiving ourselves for some of the things that we hold grudges against ourselves for mistakes that we made in the past. So that ebook is absolutely free. But while you're there, make sure that you check out some of the other ebooks that I have there, including the Core 4, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. As you guys know, I am a girl dad. My baby is 21 now. But in that journey, there were some core values that I had to bestow upon her and pour into her. And I think that every father and even mothers should know what those values are that your daughter should be getting from her father or the father figure in her life. That is a great resource. Also, the ebook from Males to Men is also available, which is a male mentoring ebook for young men that are transitioning into adulthood. All of those can be found at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. When you go to get your free copy of the Forgiving Me ebook, do me a favor and purchase one or two or three of our other ebooks that we have available there. Please check those out. Also, make sure you guys go to our Deal to Heal tees, which is our inspirational t-shirt line, where not only do we have our inspirational tees, but we also have our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. One for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast and one for the Deal to Heal, the E. James podcast. Both of those can be found at the deal2healtees.com. That's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Again, that is deal, the number 2, healtees.com. And last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every other month talking about everything surrounding forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, and all of those things that we talk about. Again, that's dealing with forgiveness. These are absolutely free virtual workshops. You can go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next free virtual workshop, or you can go to Eventbrite and search for Forgiveness Workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. These workshops are absolutely free, but the information is priceless. Make sure you guys go again to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next free virtual workshop. They are bi-monthly, so whenever you're listening to this, either one just ended or there's one coming up, but you can sign up for our next free virtual workshop at forgivenessmission.com. Mr. Palmer, again, let me say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for sharing your expertise, and I really look forward to watching your growth, especially with this new app. And I just want to say thank you again for coming in. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Absolutely. So you can if you want to, you can support my app. Just go to www.saolahealth.com/waitlist, and there you can join the waitlist, and you will get our updates in our newsletter. We send a newsletter out every month to kind of give you updates on where we are, what progress we're making, what programs we may be entering, what investors we may have got in touch with. So it's a very transparent app to let people know exactly who we are, because I like people to see the process. So in the case they want to actually do their own thing one day, they too can. And then I'll leave you with this, my favorite tagline, which is life is far from over. Whatever you do, don't give up, don't give in. Just stay within the race or your journey, whichever one you want to call it. Because my thing is this, life is a journey. It's never ending. It's always ongoing. You choose your battles. You choose how you want your life to be. You choose your destiny. You have the opportunity to heal, start your healing journey and start going in places that you never imagined that you've gone to, but in order to get there, you got to start being vulnerable first.
All right. What's your social media handles where we can follow you?
Absolutely. So you can follow me, Joevan J. Palmer. That's Joevan JPALMER on all social media channels, Facebook, Instagram. I'm not really big on Twitter, so you can catch me on there, but you probably won't see much anything on there. And then on Threads and all that good stuff. And then you can, if you want to, I don't really release too many podcast episodes like I used to, but you can catch me on Vulnerable Moments on YouTube as well and all podcasting channels.
All right. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.